dinner, and we fused together a few years ago, and created Save the Med. Now, Save the Med, with its name, gives us quite a broad geographical scope. But it's very important for all the listeners and all the viewers out there to understand that the core ethos of Save the Med is to act locally. All right, and it's really about identifying local issues and addressing those local issues with local solutions.
Well, the Balearic Islands, they're extremely unique. What is so unique about them?
Oof, where do we start? How long have we got? I mean, when you look at the nautical charts, look at the maps. We are in the middle of the Western Mediterranean. We're geographically separated by some quite deep channels, and that physical separation, it actually has created a little pocket of marine paradise in amongst a very, very sick sea, being the Mediterranean.
How sick is it?
On a scale of
Say 1 to 10.
10, and 10's good and 1's pretty sick, I would say probably about a 1.5.
What is wrong? What is going wrong? What has gone wrong?
Yeah, it's a big question, you know, and for an Aussie to come to the other side of the world and to see a sea which has had it held so much importance in human development, cultural development over centuries, and for this sea to be ignored for so long and treated so badly is a really, really sad thing. And it's probably not a 1.5. It's probably a little bit better, but definitely a lot better in the Balearic Sea than the rest of the Med. And you need to understand the Mediterranean it's surrounded by, I think, around about 21 different countries. So you have a lot of different influences on that one body of water. So Manuel San Felix gave it a good description. You know, we've got all the same problems that the Atlantic has, that the Pacific has, but being a closed sea, those problems are highlighted a lot more than what you would see in an open ocean, so to speak.
What is the most crucial thing that we're facing right now? What is probably the worst problem that we're facing as far as pollution?
Well, the worst problem that we're all collectively facing is climate change. Mm-hmm. And this is the overarching problem that every single environmental NGO should be working towards changing through their specific programs that they have. So within Save the Med at the moment, we're continuing to develop the plastic pollution programs and also add more programs in, but try to make sure that we align them with the Sustainable Development Goals and make sure that we're not just contributing to what we think is a problem in the sea here, but it contributes to the bigger picture.
Well, and the great thing that I noticed about Save the Med is that you are literally going to the source. You're starting from school-age children on up, looking towards the future, making sure that the work that we're doing now is continued through the next generation and the generation after.
I think, I mean, the beauty of the outreach of Save the Med is, you know, yes, we're working with children with education programs. We're also working with businesses. We're working with the government, the local government here. Policy change is where we're going as well, and we've had a couple of meetings at the food and the FAO to put the science on the table of the policymakers and give them more information to create policies that actually make a change in such a complex ecosystem like the Mediterranean.
Now, as far as yachting goes, how can they help the situation in the Med? Because we all know that yachting is completely reliant, of course, upon the waters. And people come and get on their boats and they want to go out and see beautiful, pristine seas or oceans, and they want to enjoy them in their natural beauty. How can they help?
There's various ways. I mean, we have physically donating goods or funds to Save the Med. We have a wish list, and at the moment, our already donated rib, the RV Ondine, is she had a pretty heavy working season, 2020, and she's pretty beaten. So we need some more tubes. We need to replace her tubes for the next season, or replace the boat. So if any yachts have got a 7 to 9 metre rib sitting in one of their sheds that they want to donate to a very proactive organisation, then get in touch. Obviously funds, but I mean, to get people really involved, you can give. But one of the things with Save the Med, and this has happened with me over the years, and also Rick, who was the founder of Alnitac, is to get people involved for the mid to long term. And the way that you do that is to bring them into the organisation, find out what they like within what we have, and then let them participate in these activities. Throughout this season, we had I don't know how many days at sea, and when I say at sea, we were 20 miles off Cabrera, 20 miles off Dragonetta. We're out there. Science objectives are to tag turtles, and we have one of our tagged and rescued turtles that we had from this year, Thunderbird, we released her in Soyer. And if you go if you Google turtle tracker Sothib, you'll see a live output of where Thunderbird is now, and she swam right around the north of Mallorca, and then off to Gibraltar, and now she's on her way back to Florida, where she was potentially born and where she's potentially going to lay some eggs. So that's some of the science side of things.
Actually, let me stop you there for a minute, because you say turtles. Now, I saw right throughout social media this year, I mean, more so this year than in past, I think, but there was a whole pile of people rescuing turtles out of the fishing lines that were left behind.
Yeah, well, this is what I was getting onto. The fact that we had to rescue Thunderbird, she was trapped in a ghost fad. And we've got a program, Ghost Fads, ghostfads.org is a website. It's the only website, it's the only project that we've catalysed that has its own website. And this is really a call to action for the yachting community as well. These fads, Ricardo saw them 30 years ago. Now a fad is a fish aggregation device used in various fisheries around the world, some big, some small, some legal, some illegal, some sustainable, some not sustainable. It's a very common tool used to catch fish, and basically anything floating on the surface of the sea will create shade, which then will attract fish. That's the basic theory, and the fishermen come in and they catch it. The mahi-mahi, or the dolphin fish fisheries here in the Balearics, is probably one of the most sustainable fisheries in the world. The season's just coming to an end now, and that's with anchored fads.
Mm-hmm.
But the ones that we're finding are a collection of plastic bottles, drinking bottles, 1.25, 2 litre bottles. Inside these bottles are coloured plastic bags or spray paint. We're assuming for identification. And then those bottles are actually floating a whole like Medusa's net or hair of what you would call baling twine. So the twine that you see on hay bales in the country. And what we think is that potentially this is coming from extremely poor communities in North Africa. They're obviously using rubbish to create these tools. Now, if any yacht captain or yacht crew member or yacht owner or yacht guest was to see one of these things in the water as they were cruising past, you would not think it was created to feed people.
It just looks like garbage.
It looks like a collection of rubbish.
Okay.
So what we think is that these people they're so desperate to feed their families that they're potentially setting these traps or fads to catch turtles, to eat the turtles. Now, 3 years ago, we started to see them in and around the waters of Cabrera. And on a rough numbers, 3 years ago, we were seeing maybe 1 or 2 a week. This year, we were collecting between probably 2 and 5 a day. to give you an idea of the increase of numbers of these things. Now, we work with Palmer Aquarium, with the Rescue Centre, with Fundación Palmer Aquarium. Deborah and her team have been absolutely overrun all summer, and potentially still are, with turtles going in, and 80 to 90% of these turtles have been caught in FADs, and this is what Thunderbird was caught in. So the call to action for the yachting community is to go to ghostfads.org, and we're looking for yachts to join management companies that are willing to put their yachts into this flotilla, and give us information about where they're seeing these FADs floating around, hopefully collecting them, potentially even sending us in some samples of what's growing on there, so we can then backtrack and work out how long it's been in there and where it's come from.
Yeah.
The turtles that are tagged, they potentially have the ability to show us where these are coming from too, because if one of these turtles gets caught in one of these, taken up into a beach in North Africa and eaten, then we'll have a very specific location. So the other, with the yacht signing up to this flotilla, it's also about Save the Med providing best practices, because you're out in the sea, you're cruising from wherever, and you come across a turtle trapped in twine. What's the first thing that people would think to do?
Exactly what we've been seeing them do is they cut them free and let them go.
And they really honestly think and feel that they've done the right thing. So it's quite difficult and heartbreaking for somebody like me or Deborah when we get a video from a yacht captain or yacht crew or yacht owners saying, Brad, look, we just found this turtle, it was entangled, we let it go, and we all feel fantastic, we thought we'd share it with you. And then I've got to turn around and say, listen, I'm really, really sorry, but if that entanglement had restricted any blood flow through any of the fins, just like a human limb, if we restrict the blood flow and then let it go from a tourniquet, there's a very good chance that we will die, and same with the turtles. So if you go onto the website, there's best practices, what to do. It's really, really simple. Call 112, get the turtle out of the water, and then just wait for assistance. And then typically that turtle will be taken to Palmer Aquarium.
So then once they're nursed back to health, then they are tagged and they're back released again to just go about living the life that they normally would have lived.
Well, a normal turtle life in the Mediterranean Sea is dodging illegal long lines, it's dodging ghost fads, it's dodging all these threats that these amazing animals have to face day to day. So on one side, when we're releasing these turtles, it's emotionally, it's a very, very positive thing to experience, but we also know the reality, and these turtles are potentially safer in the rehabilitation centre at Palmer Aquarium than they are when we put them back out to sea.
It's such a shame. Is there any other marine animals at this moment that are in need of help or looking close to extinction? Or
all of them.
Yeah.
All of them, and it's the turtles. It's great to have these species that people can connect with. The sea, we don't have panda bears, so turtles they're a really good thing for people to connect with, and they're a lot of the time they're at the surface. And this is another thing for the yachting community. If it's the turtles love to in the Med, they love to sunbake and chill and sleep in the afternoon. So if you're driving your tender and you do spot these things, how to approach it, how to avoid them, and all these best practices of approaching whales, approaching dolphins. And we know that when there's owners and guests on board, and even when there are not owners and guests on board and the crew are on board and these animals appear, there's typically some type of interaction. Yeah. Now, for us to know this happens, we have a responsibility to then provide what the best practice is because sometimes these animals will approach, so you need to know what to do. But it's been a really, really busy summer at sea. We found a lot of illegal fishing equipment, but we also had a lot of very, very positive experiences with various species of animals, which as an Aussie, as an old Aussie diver, would never have imagined being within the Mediterranean.
What, as an old Aussie diver, I like how you describe yourself. What does it look like under the sea here in the Med? And I know that you've been here for quite a period of time. So have you noticed a change, say in the last 10 or 15 years?
Yeah, sure. And I'll start with the positives. I mean, El Toro, the marine protected area of El Toro, which is just off Port Adriano. I mean, it was protected as a marine protected area 15 years ago or so. And the data that you see on the charts from the scientists that do their surveys through the summer, the biomass increases amazingly. And as a diver, going to these areas is absolutely spectacular. When I was working as a private dive instructor and private dive guide for yacht owners and guests, a lot of them come to the Med, and this is their like chill out area. It's not diving area, it's chill. But their son or their daughter or their wife or whoever wants to go for a dive, so they give me a call. And I say to them, morning, sir, morning, ma'am, how's it going? What are you expecting from this dive? And they say, nothing. We're not expecting anything. I've been diving everywhere in the world. It's all fantastic. I've done 2 dives in the Med and it's terrible. And then I've got an internal smile knowing exactly where I'm going to take them. I take them to El Toro, and the last job I did with a yacht owner, he got to the surface. He was almost in tears, and that wasn't because of my bad behaviour.
It might have been part.
Yeah, potentially,
it, yeah.
potentially. But he was like, that was the best dive I've ever done. And the captain was on the swim platform. So I said, excuse me, can you just say that again a little bit louder, please? And that reaction, when people come to an area and they have an expectation of nothing, and you show them these experiences which completely blow their minds, this is a lifelong lasting, not just memory, but the way that they feel. And a lot of the time they're feeling this with their family and with their friends. So that was one of the things I do miss about taking yacht owners and guests into the water here, is giving them that sensation that they would never have expected.
So is there a really marked and significant difference between the areas that are protected and the areas that aren't?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. You go up the Tramontana coast, and there are no fish. I mean, you've got lots of little damsels, and you've got lots of tiny nervous groupers. The groupers in El Toro, they cruise around you. They're big, they're fat, they're happy. But these ones up in the Tramontana, they know what a human is, and a human is somebody that's going to take their life. So they're hiding. So marine protected areas are critically important, and it's not just for the environment. You look at the the numbers of divers going out of Port Adriano. It's a lot more than on the Tramontana because El Toro is there. Malgratz is there. Now we've just had Sa Dragoneta protected as well. That will be, my prediction is, the best selection of dive sites in the entire Mediterranean within 5 years.
How quickly? So within 5 years. So you would say it takes about 5 years for an area that becomes protected to at least become more, I mean, it's not going to be completely rehabilitated in that period of time. But...
No, you won't see a complete regeneration of the whole ecosystem, but you will start to see different species increasing in numbers, potentially new species coming into the area that weren't there, that were driven out through overfishing.
So a lot of these things, it's a result of overfishing and pollution in the water.
It is. I mean, one of the big subjects, and I was talking about that at Maria's meeting this morning, is the sewer systems here in the Balearics, and that's nobody wants to touch it, nobody wants to fix it, and it just keeps going and going and going. That problem is going to have to be solved. It's as simple as that. And when you look at the marine protected areas side of things, you know, I may be a long-haired greenie, but the reality is that to make money on a mid to long term, we need a healthy, not just a healthy terrestrial environment, but we need a healthy marine environment. Then all of our businesses all of a sudden become a lot more financially stable for a lot longer. If we were to establish a couple more marine protected areas in Mallorca and manage them much better than what we're managing them now, and considering the resources, the management is pretty good considering the resources. So we need, I would say, to increase the resources for marine protected areas, minimum, and I'm quoting Aniol Esteban on this one, by 2, and potentially 5 times the amount of resources going into it to make any considerable difference. So this is, I mean, industries like the yachting industry, worldwide, there are some very, very good people in this industry. I mean, you look at our research boat, the Toftavag, we had her out of the water at Astilleros. Astilleros charged us nothing, absolutely nothing. So, and thank you very much, Astilleros, it was awesome. But there's ways that, that yachting, and here's another quote, yachting can give back, isn't it? That's another.
Yeah, it's another.
So there are many ways that yachting can give back, and yachting gives back. They're giving back to the local community. And there are very, very good people in the industry. And it's just a matter of us connecting and finding the right interests with people, you know, and where their heart really is, because we all need the environment to survive, and it's I mean, it's a beautiful blue color now, but give it a few years, if we don't do much about it, it's not going to be the same.
Did you notice any change? And I know this is probably something that's talked about straight across the face of the planet in every area, and we did see a lot of doctored pictures between March, when lockdown hit, pretty much straight across the planet.
Yeah.
And then when lockdown came out in July, you know, there was a lot that was, you know, stories being told, as it were. But was there any change when humans were not allowed to go anywhere or do anything? Did you see any comeback whatsoever of fish, of any of that?
The only thing that I can comment on that I saw with my own eyes and the team experienced when we went back to sea at the end of lockdown, what we came across was a huge amount of illegal fishing equipment. So discarded illegal long lines. Now these long lines, when you're fishing with a long line, if you put it at a certain depth, you avoid almost all of the bycatch. And bycatches can be turtles, can be sunfish. If it's shallow, can be birds, Balearics shearwater. You know, they're diving down to get their food. They grab a hook and they're another victim. So we were pulling in quite a few hundred meters of illegal long lines. We came across an illegal drift net, which had a sperm whale carcass in it. Now the carcass and the net, it may have been a carcass before it hit the net, who knows? But the fact that it was a drift net and the material, and I've still got some of it at home, it was almost brand new and very high quality material. Drift nets have been illegal since the early 90s in the Mediterranean.
So where would they get that?
So sources tell me it's potentially coming from Italy, but I don't know. All right, so it will be potentially North Africa, but this is, I mean, it's a big problem.
And what is a drift net exactly?
A drift net is they also call them walls of death. So you have a mile or 2 miles of net.
Mile.
All right. Floats on the top, nets going down, weights on the bottom, and it does what it says it does on the box. It drifts. So basically anything that's coming in contact with it is dead.
So it literally, it's not even necessarily half or 3/4 of what gets caught in that net is something they don't even use or don't even want.
Exactly. exactly.
That's insane.
Yeah, it is. It is. What happens at sea is really quite insane, and this is one of the reasons we Save the Med now. The evolution of this organisation has been mind blowing, but that was then, and we need to focus on where we're going in the future. So working at Brussels level and policy change level, and making sure that we're taking the work that our scientists are doing, and not just our scientists, but scientists from other organisations, governments, and bringing us all together and taking this information to the policymakers and assisting that process in making policy that actually changes things in the field.
What can, say, for example, individuals do? People that aren't yacht owners, maybe they're just crew, or maybe, you know, they're onshore support to the yachting industry. What can we do as individuals in, you know, in our own hands, the power that we have within our own hands to make our little bit of change?
Well, I mean, we did specific for yachts. I mean, you can get involved in and again promoting that whole local. That local movement and local force is, I know, you know, the yachting industry has its 3 or 4 core locations around the world, and to identify small to medium NGOs, and I say small to medium NGOs because they're a lot more efficient, and they're a lot more personal as well. So working on projects and identifying projects that you want to get involved in is definitely one way that that individuals can help out. But I mean, getting your yacht involved in programs. We've got a program called Plastic Free Balearics, where we've created a single-use plastic index, which what it does, and I love it for this, it removes our necessity of listening to marketing. All right. Now, and particularly with bioplastics, everybody's told, oh, this is bioplastic, so this will do whatever it does. The majority of bioplastics don't do what they say on the box, right? And why don't they do what they don't say on the box, what it says in the box? Because in Europe and in many parts of the world, there's no control on what the marketers can and can't say. So with this index, where it gives us the ability for consumers and individuals and businesses to actually gauge how much better or worse a replacement or alternate product is for single-use plastic. So getting involved in projects like this, we did some videos on a couple of yachts. One of them was Roma, who started to remove their single-use bottles by putting in different systems. So there's loads of stuff that people can do. It's not that hard to make the hardest part is to make that first step in the change. And once you start to go and you see the benefits for the environment, the benefits for yourself, it's quite addictive.
Well, I mean, what some people don't realize is that, you know, for example, a yacht that used to buy plastic bottles all the time, yeah, sure, there's an initial investment that may hurt a little bit, but long term, you're actually saving yourself money at the same time as saving the environment. So it's really a win-win situation.
You know, people love numbers and they love the comparison. And I can't remember what it was, 20,000 bottles, but we've got a video with one of the crew members from Roma, and they were telling us the numbers that they'd reduced by putting in a water filter for drinking water, and that was just for the crew. And the numbers were just mind-blowing, you know, and that's one yacht. So you'd imagine if a management company, for example, was to successfully convince the owners of all of their yachts under management that this is what's going to happen, and that management company could then say, okay, so this year it's been 35 million plastic bottles that we have not put into a broken recycling system.
And what would the probability of, say, for example, enacting some sort of legislation that yachts could not be built without having a water filtration system?
This is where I was saying about policy change and legislation. This is where it has to happen. We can do so much at a community level, but unfortunately, we're human beings.
Yeah.
So there's always going to be opportunists. There's always going to be people that sort of bend the rules and want to benefit themselves, and that will never change. So unless we have that policy and that legislation in place, which the Balearic government's doing a great job considering the pressure that they're under from the lobbies with the single-use plastics. But this is where it all needs to go, and this is one of the the strategies of Save the Med was over the last 10 years is to build up that community base. With a community base, start to really understand where we can add value in changing policy, head to Brussels, but with the support of the community.
Right.
Right. And this is I think it has to be the end goal is policy change and legislation.
How does that work? I mean, when you say with support a community, does that mean signatures? Does that mean money? Does
both and
Yeah.
more? You know, we're in a unfortunately around the world we have this political system that puts people in for a few years and then they're out and then somebody's in. So there's no longevity in what they do. And if somebody changes something, the next person will change that again.
Or they just don't have a government at all?
Oh yeah, or they don't. Yeah, exactly. So having the support of the people is really, really important because that voice, the voice of unity, it does change the way that politicians act and what they do and what they don't do. So this is part of the strategy of Save the Med.
Well, and I think too, it does come down to who you vote for, really. You know, when you go to the voting polls, it's a process, isn't it? It's straight across the board. You have to educate yourself.
Again, you know, I'm on the advisory board for Maria's Foundation as well. And a lot of these discussions happened. We had a meeting this morning, and this was something that we discussed as well, was the fact that marine regeneration, marine conservation, anything to do with improving the environment or improving society or our communities, it should be across the board. Yeah. It should be on both sides of the political system. It shouldn't be one party's view and another party's opposition. You know, that these things need to be across the board. And if that support that we get on the ground from the yachting industry and other industries helps us sort of establish this work to be on both sides of the political parties, then we might have some sort of chance in really making some big improvements.
Well, now that we've covered the political aspect, as one of your team had mentioned to me a few days ago, something about bluefish tuna. You have some experience.
Tuna?
Yeah.
We were on a manta tagging expedition off the waters of probably about 20 miles off Cabrera this year. And we saw what we thought was they're giant devil rays. Okay, so before everyone out there going, mantas in the Mediterranean, they're giant devil rays. Okay. And in fact, the common name's been changed to something else, mobulas. And we saw what we thought was a fin. So we got the scientists, the taggers, the multimedia team, including myself, into the tender, and we went off hoping to film and tag a mobula. And then I saw 2 or 3 bluefin tuna jumping out of the water. And I saw this 2 years ago, but 2 years ago, we were seeing 50 or 100 of these things jumping out of the water, birds flying down, and it was chaos. And so I said to Dan and the rest of the crew, let's go and have a look and see whether there's any tuna there. And because there was so few on the surface, I thought, it's going to be a really small school. What we worked out a few years ago was to get into the middle of the school, these schools of bluefin tuna, you can't do it slowly. If you do it slowly, which is what we tried to do at the beginning with respect for the animal and everything else, the animal is the animals are miles away. Yeah. So you need to do it relatively quickly. And I thought, well, let's go and have a look and see. And we sped in, rolled back in with our cameras, and we were in just these layered walls of bluefin tuna circling all 3 of us. It was one of the most mind-blowing experiences I've had underwater ever. And it was, you know, we were at 15 meters. They were thick to the surface and thick as far down as you could see them. And they were circling us. And these are really big, heavy, super fast fish. Not one of us was touched. And it was after speaking to a few people saying, weren't you scared? I was like, that was the last thing that entered our minds. But we do have some pretty spectacular images of these really spectacular fish.
I'd like to actually, maybe we'll be able to show people that.
Yeah,
someday.
sure.
Yeah.
If there's a lot of we've got a fantastic multimedia head, Dan Abbott, who
He's in the studio.
who's in the studio helping out now. G'day, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
He he's helped this year to really push the multimedia forward. And on our YouTube channel, you can check out all the videos there. It's definitely worth a watch.
Yeah, well, and it's just Save the Med on YouTube.
It is. Yeah, Save the Med Foundation on YouTube.
Great. So is there anything else that you want to tell us about, or, we'll make sure that we can get the information out there and let people know how to get a hold of you guys. And the stuff that you've talked about today is absolutely mind-blowing and something that I think everybody should really consider and think about. Our future depends on water. If we don't have healthy water, we don't exist.
It's true. What can I say? I mean, if there's anybody out there watching or watch it later on, and they've got any questions, please let me know. Some of these experiences, if the owner of your yacht has any interest in this, then there are possibilities to get people out onto the boat and into the field as well. So hands-on experiences. But yeah, just take care. Just think about what's below that beautiful blue turquoise surface, which everybody appreciates and loves so much. Just appreciate what's underneath it, what we put into it, and what we take out of it as well.
That's a good one, what we take out of it as well, because there's quite a bit of overfishing going on in the world as well.
It is. You really, with fishing and fish stocks, you really need to you need to be a pain in the neck and ask where the fish is coming from, how it's caught. And you start to ask some questions, and you start to learn that seasonality of fish species is really important, when something's in season, when it's not, how it's caught, the type of fishery, whether it's a bottom trawler scraping the bottom off the sea to catch one species but destroying everything else, or whether it's a selective fisheries like the local artisanal fisheries with the mahi-mahi or the dolphin fish here. And that's one of the most sustainable, as I said, sustainable fisheries in the world.
Well, I mean, no, I know, being from Canada, salmon is quite, river salmon anyways, is very, very protected. And I remember when I was a kid, anybody could catch a salmon. It wasn't a big deal, but they became overfished. And nowadays, unless you're native Canadian, you can't touch them. So because it depleted so quickly. And that's just sort of the reality of it. If we don't look after what we have, we're not going to be able to touch it at all, let alone maybe every once in a while.
Yeah, it's very sad. I've got a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, and I think about me growing up in particularly when I was living in Avalon on the northern beaches of Sydney. And I was at Avalon Public, so I still remember sitting there having breakfast, watching the dolphins in the surf, walking down to the beach, seeing it, that the plastic pollution wasn't a thing then. It just didn't exist. I mean, it did exist, but it didn't exist in the sense that it does today. So when I think about what my kids and the way they act compared to what I was doing, it's been in one generation. It's a massive disaster.
I think as humans, we make this mistake. I mean, I remember back then everything was paper, and of course, then everybody wanted to save the forest. So they decided plastic was the way to go to save the forest. And then, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, you realize that also was a mistake, because that's killing just everything. So, it is difficult. And humans are not perfect, guaranteed. And we do try to do things, but I think we all need to try harder.
I think, for me, with no economics background, no biology background, a little bit of experience running my own business, now the experience running this organization, which with the help of an amazing team. It seems to me that the only way that humanity can completely shift is if businesses add in 2 columns into their spreadsheets when they're doing their business planning, and that is to pay for the environmental damage that their business creates, and the social damage that their business creates. And if those two columns were put into every single business plan all over the world, then all of a sudden I think we'd see businesses that were regenerative, that were contributing to positive community growth, positive communities generally, and that it's a really simple concept. But how the hell do you do it?
Well, yeah, I don't know, because generally speaking, most big businesses don't get to be big businesses unless they are more worried about corporate gain than they are about anything else.
And it will, and it's a generational change as well.
Yeah.
You know, it will change.
Well, we are seeing it in yachting as well. I mean, straight across the board, yachting has changed, and we're seeing that, the new yacht owners, the new breed of ultra high net worth individuals are now going to more sustainable sort of ways of living. They're looking to be on board. They're looking with their families. So it is changing, not quite as fast as it should be, though.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, thank you so much, Brad. It's always such a pleasure to have you chatting and learning all about what you're up to lately. And
it's hard to know what to talk about when I'm with you, because there's always so much deviation and room for different subjects. So thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, no, it's great. But you know what, guys? If you have any questions whatsoever, we are live, Brad and I hanging out here. We would love to have any questions, and they will come straight through into the studio for us. And I'm sure not me, because I don't know anything, but Brad knows everything. So if you've got a question for Brad, please do feel free to give us a shout and ask. Raise your hand. I think you could raise your hand on a Zoom link, and they will put the question through. So please, we'd love to hear from you.
Hello, everyone. If anyone has a question, raise your hand on Zoom, and I will unmute you so you can talk. You can also write on the chat. I'm seeing Fiona talking here. Do you want me to unmute you, Fiona?
Hi, Brad.
Hey, Faye.
I have a couple of questions. On some points you talked about. The first one was, you talk about sustainable seafood and sustainable fisheries. Is there some sort of way that we can figure out what is sustainable to eat in the Med locally? Because I know that they have some great things in California, but is there anything local?
Yeah, we, as you're very aware, Fiona, we did we made an attempt at starting a Western Mediterranean sustainable seafood guide many years ago, and over time, learning a little bit about guiding the masses to consume one type of fish. It sort of raises the question of whether those guides are the right way to get people to act and consume differently. Is it right for us to focus everybody towards one fisheries, like I just did with the mahi-mahis here? Or is it better for us and other organisations to come up with specific questions and guidelines that each individual can then use as their own, have their own toolbox to go to a restaurant and ask about the type of fishery, and rather than the specific type of fish species itself, but it's more a general toolbox on something that people can use across the board. And this is more so where Save the Med's going at the moment, as opposed to saying this fishery is good at this time of year, but to say, hey, these are the 4 questions that you should be asking every time you want to buy fish, and here's the range of answers, something along these lines. And I think providing, as we did with the plastic index, providing a tool so people can think for themselves rather than providing them the information, I think is a much better way to help change the way that we are.
Thank you.
Good question.
Do you have another question, Fiona?
Yeah, there was actually a friend of mine asked me this morning. They were in Portals, sort of watching some guys spearfishing, and you know, I thought they were looking for octopus there, and then, you know, the whole question about like recreational fishing close to the shore, and what are the guidelines on that? What are the rules, or are there any?
Good question. Recreational fishing. This is a big industry. And when you look at, there's a lot less data with the recreational fishing than there is with professional fishing, but you have a huge amount of biomass of fish coming out of the water with recreational fishing. And you also have the problem with the grey area between where a recreational fisherman or red area becomes a professional fisherman and starts selling what they catch. So yeah, there are guidelines here. You need specific licenses. You can and can't fish in certain areas at certain times of year or certain days, but you really need to dig for them, particularly in the Balearics. But it's a growing industry, and it definitely has a huge impact on local marine environments.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, well, if there's no more question from you, Fiona, I'm going to let Nigel talk now. Okay. You can also put your video if you want, Nigel. Sorry.
I think we'll save everybody from that painful experience. Hey, Brad, you mentioned a broken recycling system. Please, could you just expand on that?
I did mention a broken recycling system. All right, so where do you start? As far as I'm concerned, and as far as Save the Med's concerned, recycling is the last thing that we should be doing. You know, recycling is a great excuse for the plastic companies to be producing more plastic because they say it's recyclable. But then you look in various parts of the world, there are various ways of dealing with these items. So recycling system as such is specifically needs to be the whole, how do I describe this? The whole way we look at consuming needs to be redesigned. And a very, very simple example of that is everything that you drink out of a plastic bottle can be in a glass bottle. All right. Now, glass, if you're looking at a single-use vessel to consume and put down, plastic bottle, you drink, it will get either burnt. The chance of a plastic bottle getting recycled is 0 to none. It'll get downcycled, but it won't turn into the same thing again. But if you had a returnable system, and people will go, oh, but that's going to cause so much work. We change, we adapt. This is something human beings do extremely well. So this example of all consumables that are in single-use plastic bottles going into glass bottles that are within a returnable system. To
be honest, that's not even changing our way of, that's like going back 30 years to the way it used to be. It's not even that we be relearning, right?
Completely. But there's vested interest, there's big business to make sure that these plastic bottles continue to be in circulation. So when I say a broken recycling system, I just mean a broken system, punto. You know, and we really need to look at the way that we do everything. You know, what we consume, how much we consume. Do we really need all of this stuff? You know, it's like we're filling our sacks full of goods and services that we can take with us when we die. You know, it's like, what are you going to do with it all? Yeah. So sorry, Nigel, if that was a little bit of a roundabout response. Did that help at all?
No, I've got it. Yeah, thank you for that.
Oh, anything else, Nigel?
No, that's answered my question. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. Is there another question from anyone here? No? Oh, I guess then we can close the meeting now.
Thank you everyone so much. And thank you, Brad, for coming
Yeah,
here
thanks so
and
much, Brad.
giving us like all your information. And you are such a champion for the cause. And you're always raising awareness throughout the Balearic Islands. And in such a short period of time, you've managed to raise the awareness of the issue. You know, even 12, 15 years ago, people weren't talking about it. And thanks to you now, just about everybody is talking about it. So
Yeah, I can't take all the credit. So thanks to our awesome team, and team of employees, board members, but all the other groups, Marias, all the other groups that have started to move over the last few years. I will take a little bit of credit for our little bit of work that we've done, but collectively things are really moving, which is fantastic. So thanks for having me.
well, and thank you for tuning in, because you know what? It's really important that we all take care of the Balearic Islands so that continue to be the heavenly place that they are, really, the Mediterranean Sea here and the Balearic Islands as a whole. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. And the Balearic Yacht Show continues for the next 2 days, of course, and we've got a ton more things coming up for you. So, hey, we'll see you tomorrow. See you later.